Our job begins where most advisors stop. Saving money is great, but how do you spend it without risk in retirement? Welcome to Every Day is Saturday with Brad Gotto and Matt Stahl, partners and private wealth managers at Fiat Wealth Management. In this podcast, we aim to broaden your knowledge about the financial world we live in today and make the boring and complex financial decisions fun, informative, and educational. Join us on this journey where Brad and Matt will explore different strategies on how to spend your money without guilt and have peace of mind knowing you are spending it the optimal way in retirement.
You found them. The advisors you want are at Fiat Wealth Management. But now that you know you want to work with them, what happens? I'm Patrice Sikora. Brad Gotto and Matt Stahl, it's your firm. How did you develop your process to welcome new clients and get them up and running?
Great question, Patrice. And this is going to sound maybe a little bit trite. I don't know. But at the end of the day, you begin with the client in mind. We just kind of put ourselves in their shoes and said, well, if we were out there searching for something, especially something as intimate as, a financial planner or essentially a kind of a personal CFO, what would we want that process to look like? And I think it's probably better to start with what we didn't want it to look like. And the quintessential, like we're in sales, Patrice. So let's just first of all, just get that out there, right? So there's definitely some sales to what we do. That said, probably the worst sales experience anybody ever has is either at a car dealership or in a timeshare setting.
Oh gosh.
Right?
Yes.
And so you've obviously sat through at least one of probably multiple of both of those. But the bottom line is the reason they're so uncomfortable is because they're pushy. We just kind of envision the sitting down in that timeshare presentation and you just had the sinking feeling because they're not going to let you out of there. Like you have to say no, like 8 times.
But you've got the 2 nights and the 3 days already, so don't worry.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're going to upgrade you. They're going to do all these things. And same thing in the car lot. There's times where we just want to go peruse and we're kind of walking around the car lot. And then you see, the car salesman with the binoculars looking out through his glasses inside and he sees you and you're like, shoot, we've been spotted. And you just get like this negative feeling when they start to walk towards you and you just want to leave. You don't even want to, the very person that's supposed to be there to help you. Right. I mean, because that's the whole point of that person is to say, hey, you're looking at a car. How can I help you? How can I help get you into the right vehicle? And so that's what we were trying to avoid is this feeling of
binoculars.
When I talk to Fiat, the advisors at Fiat, I'm going to be sold something. And so I need to walk in there with my shield up and just make sure that I don't walk out with any regrets, right? You don't want to have that conversation because what happens, right? The husband and wife walk into the timeshare presentation. The husband looks at the wife and goes, we're not buying anything. Just before we even go in there, we're going to be, we're on the same team. We're same team here. Let's go. So
he's the one who signs the contract though.
Yeah. I'm not touching that. I'm not going there. I see what you're trying to make me do. And I'm not doing it.
Move on, please. Move on.
So one of the first things we wanted to do, Patrice, was find a way to make it comfortable. And the best way to make it comfortable is to make it about them and to make it be what it should be in the first place, which is in essence, just an opportunity early on in our process to get acquainted, to figure out who they are as people, what outcomes they want, and what they're looking for. Because at the end of the day, I might not even be able to help them. I don't know what they want. And we're specialists. I think we're not general practitioners. And so quite frankly, not everybody's right for our firm, but we really built our process around this idea of cadence. So it's a slower cadence than a normal quote unquote sales cycle would be, to use that terminology, but also just around this idea of education and educate them first and give them all the education they need to make whatever decisions it is that they're trying to make. And armed with that education, Patrice, that the standard sales guy is worried, well, like if I just give them all the education, all the information, they might leave and do it without me. So they try to keep a bunch of things behind paywalls, so to speak, so that they don't have to do that. We just don't. we just educate, we take our time, make sure that we get to know them, and have built our process around kind of that concept. And whatever may be.
How many meetings do you have with people?
Well, it can really depend.
First of all, let's straighten that out there, though.
Yes.
Because we don't have meetings in our office. We have visits.
Okay.
Nobody likes meetings, Patrice, or appointments. They're typically when, in your own personal life, if you set a meeting or an appointment, it's to go file your taxes and figure out how much you owe the IRS, or get your teeth pulled or something like that. They're negative typically. And so because we're so educational and just kind of so laid back, they're visits. We only have visits at our office. There's usually coffee involved, or bubbly water or something to that effect. So, but I'll let Matt speak to the numbers, but, visits.
Okay. Yes. Visits, go for it.
Yes. Now we've established that. And all right. So we start with a first visit, and the way we describe that to our prospects is that is a chance to get acquainted. So it's a chance for us to get to know them, get to know us, and get acquainted and figure out if we can help them. And if so, then we decide to move forward to the next visit. And in that first visit, we think of it as Brad said, we always want to think of ourselves on the other side of the table. So what is the client or the prospect experiencing? And we want that to be a pleasant experience. If we look at it, we're making a decision mutually. We're deciding if we can help these people at the same time. They're deciding if they want our help at the same time. So at the end of that first visit, if we both decide that it makes sense to keep talking, we send them home with some homework. And it's to gather the documents that you'd expect, some tax returns, some investment statements. The next time we'd get together, we go through what we call an initial case analysis. And that is giving them feedback on, hey, here's the big areas of financial planning as we see it. And that could be investment planning, tax planning. And here's some things that we would suggest thinking further about. So here's some areas of opportunity that may make sense for you to dig into further. And at that point, as Brad said, we want to be the opposite of a used car salesman. So we're not going to be pushing people to make a decision at that point. That is theirs. That is information. They can take that on their own, and they would be better off than when they walked into our office. That's a foundation of what we want to accomplish. And we may have folks that take that ICA and they're going to make a decision at that point. We don't expect them to make a decision on the spot. We want them to go home, have a discussion, think about this. Now, if they decide to move forward, they're going to have a couple different options. They can go the education route, where we're going to go through and we're going to explain what their plan would be. And they can take that and go do that on their own. The other route would be more of us becoming the way we describe it, is their personal CFO. So we're helping them make decisions in all different facets of their financial life, and also helping them realize how's one decision going to affect another area of my financial life. Depending on which direction they go, the next time we get together, this is where it really throws people off. We've been talking about numbers up to this point. Well, when they decide they want to continue working with us, we jump into what we call the interview. And this is a handful of questions that are not necessarily related to numbers. It's going to be related to, who are these people? What do they value? What's important to them? What keeps them up at night? That is where we have a lot of people tell us that we've asked them questions that they've never been asked before. And certainly not by a financial advisor or anyone in the financial world.
I was just going to say, that sounds rather unique for the industry.
It does. Digging into that, we feel that we're not really going to be able to help these people unless we have the qualitative side of things along with the quantitative. It doesn't matter if we put together the best plan on paper. If it's not accomplishing what these people want for their peace of mind, it doesn't really matter. So that side of things is going to be just as important. And we use the language often. We are figuring out together if this makes sense to move forward. And I always describe it as it's a two-way bridge. And we want to meet the clients halfway on that bridge. And to know if it makes sense to keep talking, it's required to have that qualitative conversation.
So you're talking at least 4 visits, as you say, before you even get down to the nitty-gritty of what they want and trying to mesh everything together.
At least we, after the interview, we then move into what we call rules of the game. So that is going through concepts. We talk a lot about, there's so much knowledge and information out there, but there's a big lack of wisdom. So you can jump on the internet and you can search up anything you want, and you can find information to please any opinion you want to look at. Yeah. But the real wisdom is taking all that information and figuring out how it applies to us and how can we create peace of mind for ourselves. So going through those concepts is explaining, hey, these are how all these different concepts can fit into our particular scenario. And then we move on to the solutions. So now we're 5 visits in with these people. And we may have 2 more visits after this. We may have 3. It depends on the complexity, and it depends on what is of concern most to these people we're talking to.
How do you know when you're there?
That's a great question. We describe it out of the gate. We know we're there when these folks feel like there's a sense of a peace of mind that comes over them when they know we may not know all the answers. Some of these concepts we may only dug into, and we may plan to work on those throughout the course of that first year. But for them to know that they are heading in the right direction and they're part of a team that's going to steer them in that direction, that's when they start to feel that security. They feel the comfort and confidence to know we're heading in that right direction. I would argue that no one's ever arrived because things are always going to change. But it's knowing that you have someone you can count on to guide you through each of those changes.
Very true. Very true.
Well, and I think it's worth adding there, Patrice, that sure, we have kind of a cadence or agendas built out just to try to help things along and to add some structure to this idea or concept of working with somebody to kind of build out this picture of what you're after, and then trying to educate you on how to build what it is that you want. But at the end of the day, the amount of time and energy that's going to take is going to be different for every prospective client. And quite frankly, it's not about our agenda at the end of the day and what we're trying to get accomplished and how fast we can get somebody through our quote unquote sales cycle or anything else like that. I mean, Matt and I don't get into these relationships with any sort of temporary thought process, right? The idea or concept here is that we're going to be working together for the rest of their lives or our lives or whatever that looks like. And so what's the rush, right? If that's what we're after, then we don't need to have this speed on the front end. That's pretty typical of most sales type environments. We just don't have it.
It's a very interesting idea, taking your time at the front end because you're going to be together for a long time. At least you hope you will, yeah.
Well, and you only get one shot at it. The analogy I like to use is like building a home, right? You can go buy a prefab home where you have no decisions to make and, it's just kind of there. And it's not maybe exactly what you wanted, but it checks some boxes. And so you just kind of settle and you're like, whatever, it's good enough, right? Or you can go the complete custom route. Now, that takes a lot longer, a lot more visits, a lot more time, a lot more energy, and you may not have the patience for it. But at the end of the day, you're going to get exactly what you want. And so Matt made the comment, we're not for everybody. And quite frankly, we're not for the people that want the prefab. And that doesn't make them bad or us bad or good at all. It's just, we're not for everybody. And so if you just kind of want that 1 to 2 visits, I'm going to give you a couple of statements of what I got going on and you just do something with it. That's not who we are. We're the complete custom home builder that's going to sit down and take a ton of time up front to figure out exactly what type of home you're looking for, what you want the home to do for you, and try to ask questions that you hadn't even thought about asking yourself so that it can open your mind to the possibility that there's maybe more you could do with your home that you didn't even know you could do. Maybe there's limitations to some of your ideas of what you wanted in your home that aren't going to work out the way that you thought they were going to work out. But having all these conversations up front and then walking through multiple set of blueprints in a collaborative effort with the client so that they can take the red pen to it as many times as need be. Because the last thing I want to do is start digging without both sides feeling fully confident when this thing's done. We're going to stand back and look at it and be like, yeah, that's exactly what we wanted.
That's a great analogy, Brad. Absolutely great. And how many people do you come in contact with? They sit down with you, they start working with you, and then they say, I didn't realize it was so hard.
If we get accused of anything, Patrice, it's of being very slow. I joke with prospective clients all the time when they first kind of engage with the firm and just tell them, look, it's an arduous process, but we're not in a hurry, and we'd encourage you not to be in a hurry either. Like I said before, you get one shot at this thing. And so we're going to take our time, and we're going to make sure that you feel really, really good and confident, because nobody, when you ask them to paint a picture, Patrice, of their financial life from today forward, whether that's I'm nearing retirement, I'm in retirement, or I'm still in my working years, kind of in the middle of them. And like, nobody looks at next week, next month, next year, 5 years, 10 years, and describes what they want out of their life financially with words like stress, anxiety, unknowns, right? That's not part of the plan. And so in order to get rid of those things, we have to spend that much time knowing what they want personally, because at the end of the day, you get to the end of a financial solution like, hey, my mutual fund can beat up your mutual fund. Well, who cares if that has nothing to do with what the client is after, right? So we do get accused of being very slow, but ultimately, I think maybe we should be asking this question more often. But I think most people are extremely happy once we kind of get through that upfront process to get those blueprints exactly how they need to be.
Well, that's a great segue into the fact that, okay, here we're talking about how you welcome people into the firm. It takes the visits to really get to know them, to get them set up properly. What about a client who's been with you for a longer period of time? How do you keep them fresh?
That's a great question. We want to ensure that it's clear that this is not a one and done thing. There's no such thing as writing out a financial plan and having everything. The one thing I always say to people when we are looking at a spreadsheet or any of the softwares that we'll use, the one thing we can guarantee is nothing's going to work out exactly as what we see on this paper. There's too many unpredictable factors in this. What we do know is, are we heading in the right direction with all the information we have on hand right now? And are we also adaptable to know when tax law changes or different economic conditions change, that we have the opportunity to adapt to that and the ability to at the same time? So in looking at that, when we talk about the beginning of building a house, or think of the initial processes, we're building a home from scratch, we're building a custom home, or we're doing a massive renovation. Well, moving forward, it's much more maintenance. So what we want to do is provide a community feeling for our clients moving forward, and also education ongoing. There's no way that we're going to cover everything, even in those 5 to 8 visits up front. There's so much information out there, and there's so many different topics that we're digging into. We could be sitting down with someone in our office and they're nodding their head the whole time when we're going through estate planning. And then we realize the next time we get together with them and say, remember what we talked about? They'll be completely honest and say, I do not remember any of that. So some of this stuff.
To be fair, right? Like I don't, Patrice, I don't know if you've had the wonderful experience of building your own home. There's a tiny bit of sarcasm there in my voice, but I remember being handed the keys and they're like, okay, we need to do the walkthrough of your home now. And they spent an hour and a half educating me on how to take care of the home. Everything from the simple things of like how to change a furnace filter all the way to more complex things. And I just remember thinking, this isn't what I signed up for. Like, I don't want to do any of this stuff. It's a brand new house. I just want it to work, right? I just want to be able to live here and not have to worry that any of this stuff needs to be done. And for whatever reason, my ignorance is probably a big piece of it. I just assume, well, it's a brand new home, we'll hardly have to do anything. Well, a lot of those things have nothing to do with the age of the house. It's just part and parcel of being a homeowner. And so it's this, but also by the time those things come around, you remember thinking, gosh, I remember a year ago when he told me I was supposed to do something or push some button somewhere or take some filter out, and I don't remember any of it. And so then you find yourself back at the education wheel trying to figure out what it was that you were supposed to be doing. And so again, with that in mind, we've just tried to build a culture where we're giving constant education and giving opportunities to our Fiat family, as we like to call them, to engage with us in an educational format. Because at the end of the day, we're not living their lives, right? We may know them extremely well on a personal level, and we know them, I would argue, on a very intimate level, because finances are a pretty private thing, but I still don't know their day-to-day. We don't know what's going on in their life. And to Matt's point, I mean, Patrice, how many times in life do you put a plan together and then look back on that plan a year later or 5 years later, and you're still on plan A? Yeah. You're usually much deeper into the alphabet at that point, as far as what plan you're on. And so we want our clients to be able to engage with us whenever it makes sense.
Why is process so important to the identity of your firm? I mean, this question, admittedly, you gave this question to me, and I think it's fascinating. Why, how does it tie into the identity of Fiat Wealth Management?
Yeah, I would say it does come down to the client experience. It is, if we know what the expectations are on each side of the table, then both of us know when we are moving towards the solutions that we mutually want to solve. And that process in putting people at ease, they can let their guard down to actually make those thought out decisions and those thorough decisions in the right state of mind. That's part of the whole process. So how do we put everyone at ease so there's not that tension where we can actually make rational decisions, knowing what's best for us long-term? That's a piece of it. I'm also an engineer by heart. And so part of that spills over into the process piece, and anything that's inefficient will just drive me up the wall. So that's my selfish plug on that side of things. So it is for anyone, process and systems are what are going to help them get to where they want to go. So as part of an identity, we want that client experience to be pleasant and for them to know what to expect moving forward.
Where did you get the inspiration for this? Because this is not the norm in the industry.
Yeah, I spoke to it a little bit earlier, just around the conversation Matt and I had around what we would want if we were on their side of the table, which I think in any sales environment, Patrice, should be happening a lot more often, right? The sales guy saying, okay, if I'm not on my side of the table and I'm on their side, what's going to drive a positive experience? But I also had the unique opportunity of being on a different side of this financial services business for 9 years, where instead of interacting directly with clients on my own and being a financial advisor, I was on another side of the business where instead of working directly with clients, I was working with other advisors. Okay. And so for 9 years, Patrice, I was on the road a lot of the weeks out of the year, meeting with independent advisors across the country. A lot of miles on airplanes, a lot of time in hotels. And I got to see a lot of different advisors, their processes, the way that they interact with their clients. And quite frankly, I felt like kind of studying for this future exam of if you were ever going to have your own processes. Well, here, I found a lot more of what I didn't want to do, what I wouldn't take away. And I was talking to Matt the whole time through all 9 of those years that I was doing that, and constantly telling him, hey, I saw an advisor do this and I thought it was wonderful. And, it's something you should be thinking about. Or I saw this, definitely don't do that. That's a terrible idea. That kind of deal. But so some of it just had to do with Matt and I having the frank conversation of, if we're them, what do we want? But then the other piece of it was just this unique opportunity to go be in my peer's office for almost a decade and not just in Minnesota, not, just all over the continental United States, and almost all 50 states. I've sat in offices with independent advisors to see what they're doing.
I think what else is important is that a lot of our inspiration also comes from outside of our industry. And so to look other directions to see what are people in other industries doing to make people feel special. And when we have someone come into our office, we talked about culture. We want to create that culture and that atmosphere where it just makes people feel good. And when they leave our office, we want them to be in a better mood when they arrived. And so that is all morphed into this and taken from other industries. What are those things that we can make that feel really special?
I love that, feeling special. Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, how can listeners reach you if they'd like to feel special?
The easiest way to get a hold of us is our website. It's got all of our contact information on there. Each individual advisor's contact information, just the firm's general contact information. The website is fiatwm.com, fiatwm.com. That's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of us.
All right. That's Matt Stahl and Brad Gotto of Fiat Wealth Management. And this is their podcast, Every Day is Saturday. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share with friends and colleagues. They'll be a little annoyed if you don't do that. I'm Patrice Sikora, and let's talk again later.
Thank you for listening to Every Day is Saturday. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Fiat Wealth Management or Foundation's investment advisors. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.